Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin, our tour through my Penguin Classic wall, where sometimes we hit authors that I don't know all that well, sometimes we hit authors that I know well but don't particularly like, sometimes we hit authors that I love, and today is one of the final, one of that third choice. Today we have an author I love, and I believe I hit a little block of him when I was just letting my fingers do the walking along the Penguin shelves, and I believe this is everything by him that I have. It might be everything that Penguin makes by him. And the author is William Dean Howells. This is Child to Sun painting there in the background. We've got, this painting is Boston Common at Twilight from the 1880s. From the 1880s, and yet still recognizable. You can still look at that and know where it is. That is the edge of Boston Common. Those postilions aren't there anymore. The streetcars aren't there anymore, but there's no mistaking. There's no mistaking it. William Dean Howells was from the Midwest, but he came to Boston and became an editor at the Atlantic Monthly. A storied editor, the kind of person who, through his sheer conviviality, became friends with almost all the major writers of his day. And was the full-blown, just stereotypical image of the literary man. He conducted a vast correspondence. He had dabbled in poetry. He knew his way around the literary establishments, the bookstores, all of the publishers, all of the his day's version of the publicists. Knew all the authors and their strengths and weaknesses, and also wrote an enormous amount of occasional nonfiction. Essays, speeches, book reviews, all that kind of stuff. It was just a full-blown literary life when he was dreaming of it. Back out in the provinces, when he was dreaming of it, he had no idea when he was younger that how much he would get of that world. The idea that crossed his mind is that he would be a player on the outlines, that he would partake of it a little, write some book reviews, edit some journal somewhere or other. Instead, he edited the foremost journal and knew everyone. First name basis, corresponding, writing all the time, honored in his lifetime. And in the Penguin Classic, I have A Hazard of New Fortunes. I have A Modern Instance, two of his bigger novels that nobody reads anymore, and actually nobody reads this author anymore at all, unfortunately. And his what has become his signature classic, The Rise of Silas Lapham. Another, is this another Child of Sun painting? Yes, it is. It was Rainy Day Boston. Those tenements I know exactly where those are. You can walk right by them. You don't have the horse and carriage anymore. You can walk right by those and they look the same, except they don't have the awnings anymore. But these three, A Modern Instance, Hazard of New Fortunes, and The Rise of Silas Lapham, are the three William Dean Howells that my hand came across, and I don't think there is anything else. Howells wrote a ton more than this. A ton. I think that Penguin at least should do his Italian journal and his Venetian journal. I have copies of those, but they're from other publishers. And I'd like it if Penguin did them, maybe in one combined volume. When Howells was a much younger man, and was jobbing for any kind of work that paid, he got a gig writing a campaign biography for one of the presidential candidates in that year. And the way that sort of thing was done, whether you're Washington Irving or Nathaniel Hawthorne or William Dean Howells, the way that sort of thing was done was that if you did a really good job, if you helped out the cause, you would get some sinecure if your candidate won. And William Dean Howells' candidate was Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln did win, and gave him a consulship in Venice. There was mostly just rounds of parties, that sort of thing. You were there to keep up the face of America, and also just in case there was trouble, so there'd be an invested American on the spot. Once again, sorry about the background construction noise. That is going to be true for the rest of this channel. Every video that I make in this channel. There's no way around it unless I make these things late at night. And late at night is when I read. So, but anyway, when Howells went to Italy, he was stationed in Venice, but he went all over and wrote enormously about it. And those were made into books that are fantastic. Also, he wrote a couple of literary memoirs about all the literary folk that he knew. It'd be great if Penguin made those as well. I have those in this room. Every bit of William Dean Howells that I have is in this room, because he's that companionable on the page. But it'd be nice if maybe Penguin did more of his novels, maybe a collection of poetry. That would be great. But the things I would go for would be the literary autobiographies and the travel books. Those are the things that I would like in Penguin. But I'm glad I have these. And these are really good. And the reason why I struck such a doom and gloomy note with people reading William Dean Howells is because about 30 years ago, 20 years ago, he was struck from the most popular, influential, and widespread literary anthology that is promulgated to schools, the Norton Anthology of American Literature. Forever and ever, for 100 years, the Norton Anthology of American Literature had the whole text of The Rise of Silas Lapham in it. So you got, for schools, if you're some teacher for, wherever, and you have an American literature course, whether you assigned The Rise of Silas Lapham or not to your students, the whole novel was in that anthology, and relatively recently, at least in geological terms, William Dean Howells was removed from that anthology. So, as far as I know, he is not remembered in schools anymore. And as we've mentioned on this channel a few times, that's kind of the key to whether or not you will be immortal, literarily speaking. Unfortunately, it's not BookTube, it's schools. And no one even knows that he exists anymore in schools. Students don't. So, aside from the 1 or 2 out of every 10,000 that are going to want to take an interest and find these characters they were never introduced to in school, aside from that, no one will even know. No one will care. It'll be amazing to me if in 30 years' time, Penguin publishes even this. They'll probably only publish The Rise of Silas Lapham. I noticed that that in A Hazard of New Fortunes, which is a terrific book, it's funny, it's really textured, it's often lumped under the easy heading of realism, but Frank Norris is also realism, and Frank Norris is unreadable. William Dean Howells, it's doing him a disservice if you look at that and think, oh, well, I don't like realism novels, so because his books are so much more sparkling than that. And it prompted, about 20 years ago, it prompted an essay in the New Yorker. The writer Adam Gopnik reread A Hazard of New Fortunes and loved it. He saw right away how alive it was. And he wrote a loving piece on it, and it caused a lot of people to want to know about that book. It caused customers to come in with that issue of the New Yorker in their hand. And when they did, and the issue was out in their hand and at the ready, I knew what they were going to ask. They were going to say, who is this William Dean Howells? Do you have this book? Do you second this author? That William Dean Howells is really good. So I of course, clip that piece out and put it in here. That belongs forever in any anthology, or it belongs especially in any copy of A Hazard of New Fortunes that I happen to have. But I had the Penguin. I had that essay in a file cabinet forever and ever since it came out, whenever that was, late 90s or the very early 2000s. I had it forever and ever because I thought it was so good. I read it over shrimp fried rice and thought it was just fantastic. So I cut it out and saved it in a filing cabinet, never looking at it again because who could find it in a filing cabinet? When I got rid of my filing cabinets and pulled out all of that stuff, threw away garbage bags full of stuff. And all the reviews, all the essays, the literary essays, I trimmed, folded, and put in their target books, which is where they belong and which is where I will be able to find them. But I noticed when I pulled this thing off the shelf that there's also another piece by Adam Gopnik, also on William Dean Howells. There's 2 different pieces in here, 2 different New Yorker issues. So that's great. Now that I have these out, I'll probably reread those clippings again. But your Penguin Classic for today is a recommend. I very much recommend William Dean Howells. Maybe not The Rise of Silas Lapham. The Rise of Silas Lapham, believe it or not, for all of its popularity, is built on a substantial number of in-jokes. And what is an in-joke after 100 years? Nothing. It's nothing at all. It's just the Enigma code. There's no way around it. That's why comedy doesn't travel well, usually. If you're interested in this author, I would try A Hazard of New Fortunes. Try that instead. You look him up or you ask around, people are immediately going to say The Rise of Silas Lapham, and definitely get to it. But if you're totally new to this author and you're wondering, will I like him? Try that first. Or the literary anthology, the literary anecdotes. He has a couple of books of literary anecdotes that are just wonderful. But one way or another, your Penguin Classic is a recommend. It's William Dean Howells. I don't know that I have any more Penguin William Dean Howells, and if we do this Penguin Classic tour in 10 years, I don't know. I don't know what I'll have to report on his reception. I think he is largely dying from the canon, and that's a shame. There should be more of him, not less. But anyway, that's your Penguin for today. It's 3 books instead of only 1. We'll see what we hit tomorrow. Will it be a whole vein or one author? we'll reconvene and find out together. Thank you, BookTube.